What's up, guys? It's Seth Kime and Tony Peters coming at you from Southwest Ohio Full Court Press. Mr. Tony Peters, how you doing today, buddy?
Um, it's a Thursday, Seth. I am doing fantastic, my man. How about yourself?
I can't complain, can't complain. It's a busy spring and summer between AAU and life in general. So now that we're getting back to, the cusp of middle end of fall means basketball is just around the corner.
Thank
Um,
God.
So looking forward to that and kind of what all that's going to bring. So definitely looking forward to that.
hmm Always, always. That's the best part about the beginning of October is you got football playoffs kicking off, and then just in a couple of short weeks, we're going to be doing scrimmages. It's going to be, before you know, it's going to be flying to the hoop in January. So it's going to come so quickly, but it truly is the best anticipation, best time of year for me, or at least I think it is.
No, absolutely. I would agree with that 100%. So we're kind of doing something a little different than what we've normally done, kicking off today and what we're calling our life series. This probably going to end up being multiple parts. I think we're starting with part one today. We'll get into part two. So a couple of different topics per episode. But just before we dive into part one, just kind of dive into what this series, what you want this series to look like and kind of what it's going to be for everybody.
Sure. So this is a project I have been wanting to do for a while, and I felt like Seth, you were a great person to do this with because we're kind of at that point in our lives. I feel, we're young enough that we're only 11 years out of high school. We're still relatively young per se, but we're also a lot older and or older enough that we are both have full-time jobs. We both live independently, have been through different things with like relationships and living situation, whatnot, whatever that may be. We've kind of seen some different things in life. And I felt like at times, especially being a former athlete when I was in high school, I sometimes didn't take a lot of good critique from people I thought was quote unquote too old, and it was usually someone that was a little younger that I tended to look a little more with, okay, they kind of know what they're talking about. So that's kind of what the premise is of this. We polled POLLED a couple different athletes and asked them for insight on what do you want, like non-sports related was the main thing. What do you want to hear advice on, or what would you want to like hear as part of like a series? And so, to be honest, a lot of these topics we're going to talk about, this comes from athletes in high school currently. These aren't things that we came up with. It's just what you guys, the viewers, want to hear. And the hope is as we continue to do this, you'll reach out or we'll have more people reach out about other topics so we can make this a constant, theme. Because at the end of the day, life is short and sports are a part of life, but there's more to life than just sports. And eventually the ball is going to stop bouncing, or whatever analogy we use for other sports, it's going to stop bouncing one day. So you want to be prepared for that next step in life. And so that's where I think we're kind of trying to do with this is let's give our own feedback as two younger adults to almost treat it as what would we tell our younger selves is kind of how I'm looking at it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. I mean, yeah, and I think, you know, obviously, while we do have that, some of that experience and have lived it a little bit, I mean, by no means are we perfect people in any aspect of it. So I guess some of this is very unscripted, just to be
Mhm.
as raw as possible with you all. Um, we basically just have the topics themselves lined out, but that's about it, just so that this can be a little more free flowing, just kind of stream of consciousness, like a live conversation. So again, I know Tony, you mentioned it, but as people watch this or as this series kind of gets going, it'd be really cool to see other people chime in and see what they want to hear us talk about, and maybe in another segment upcoming, or um, and if there's ever topics that we feel there are other individuals who could lend a different voice, maybe we, do a life series guest star or something like that. I don't know what
Absolutely.
that's going to evolve into, but certainly think that could be something very cool to explore. Um, and I would say there's no better time like the present than to just dive in. Yeah.
I agree. Let's get going, buddy.
All right, man. So first topic that we got brought up would be more centered, or it would be centered around family, appreciation for family or parents or grandparents, or let's just call it the people in our lives that are closest to us outside of, we'll draw the line at friends, because I feel like that's going to end up being the second segment, is more friend related.
Yes.
So let's keep topic one just in the silo of family, and sort of how that's guided you to start with. I can chime in after that, but let's just start there.
So before we dive in, let's kind of talk about what do we want to talk about with family, because I think there's a couple different ways you can go. I think one of the first things I think of with family is just the dynamic and appreciation and respect within family. And I know that this is it's a variable there because everyone comes from different kind of situations, but I feel like for myself, I can speak to coming from two parents, two siblings household that, they play a major role in your life. And I know for me personally, there's a lot of things I've learned from not just my parents, but two younger brothers. I'm the oldest of three. So I've gone through a lot of like the first one to go to high school, first one to graduate high school, first one to go to college, first one to graduate college, first get a job, etc. So all the first kind of came from me, but there's a lot I've learned, from my younger brothers as well. So I think that's kind of what the main premise I'm thinking, unless you want to add to that, but
No,
just kind of that dynamic of it.
absolutely. Again, it is very, I think, very important to clarify. I believe that in the grand scheme of life, you and I both had a very, I I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it, a very generic sort of upbringing. Pretty
Yes.
stable households, two parents, siblings. I've just got my one little brother. But a lot of times that's not the norm, because you can get even on, let's say a basketball team of 8 players, you've got probably at least 4 or 5 different combinations of what that looks like, whether it's single dads, single moms, whether that's 2 parent households, whether that's 4 parent households with step parents being involved, whether that's grandparents that are raising you instead of parents, even, you can take it so far to be, other types of guardians, you know,
Mhm.
that evolves so much, and looks different for everyone. So we're speaking from a very, I don't want to call it a standard place, but in a way. Um, but I think the biggest thing, like you said, learning from others, you learning from your siblings, it's also take those people that you would view as your role models in life, whether that,
Mhm.
for some people that's parents, some people that's aunts, uncles, some people that might be older cousins or older siblings that assume sort of that parental role, or that, whatever you would include family in.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of that, I think, in the appreciation was sharing their experiences, and but not trying to push their specific outcomes on you from what they experienced. So talking about the various things that they went through in life to give you another angle or another point of view, but not necessarily saying, so this is how you should handle it if you experience this. It was just more of a, my parents very much tried to foster it sort of just a very open book style of parenting, where it was, they didn't really try to hide anything from us, and conversely then we didn't feel like we ever had to hide anything from them. We could be fairly real with them and talk about a lot of different things, um, with that caveat that we always knew that they wanted what was best for us as kids.
Mhm.
That looked very different for me and my brother. I'm being the older sibling, was the very stereotypical, you know I wouldn't call it goody two shoe growing up, but I didn't get into a lot of trouble growing up. I was
Right.
fairly, a fairly good kid, and good kid, again, relative. I've made plenty of my mistakes in my days, um, but I don't think in conversations with my parents that I was an overly difficult child to parent or to raise. Um, you know, and maybe that's not the, maybe that doesn't bring in all those different things because everyone's experience is different. Um, but you know, eh, it just again, you've got to take it for what your specific experience is, and how to relate that to that greater part of how that's going to impact your life, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah. And again, I think it's important to kind of throw that caveat in there again, like what we're talking about from this is our upbringing. Obviously, everyone's going to have a different story. I think for me, one of the biggest kind of things I thought of right away when we kind of were coming up with it, we were deciding what topics to go with, I should say, was, I was kind of in that boat being the oldest child that I felt I could be open with my parents. And, growing up, I was in that same boat as you, is I didn't really get into trouble at all. I was very like, here's the line, I'm just going to walk it. Like, I don't want to try to go
Yeah.
up off of it. Like, let's stick to the status quo. And a lot of that, comes from just how I was raised. And then to your point as well, I come from a very large extended family. So I had a lot of older cousins. I was able to kind of watch and see how they lived their life and the decisions they made. And that kind of helped me as well go down the line that got me to where I am for now. But I will always remember one of the biggest lessons my parents ever gave me was, I grew up Roman Catholic, so obviously you have the 10 Commandments, and I won't go super into depth into that, but one of them was honor your mother and your father. And to me, I take that as just showing your parents that respect, because at the end of the day, they're not going to agree with you sometimes. You're going to, if they're looking out for your well-being, which almost all parents do, they're going to tell you what you need to hear, what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And sometimes it's going to be, you may not like what they have to say, but I can tell you with 100% certainty, at least in my life, that I have never had a situation where my parents gave me advice and I look back and said they were giving me that advice for a reason besides trying to help me or, looking out for me. So
Right.
one of the lessons for me I've learned very early on is, just having that respect for your parents. I see that. I think we see that, just with what we do in the basketball world, bringing it into basketball, you kind of get to hear how people talk to their parents sometimes. And it kind of kills me sometimes to hear it because, again, most parents, they're looking out for your well-being, trying to help make you the best person you can be. And the worst way to kind of give back to that is to show that disrespect.
Right. And again, I will say there is a caveat because again, some of that, the blanket of, you're supposed to respect your mother and your father, right?
Mhm.
That's your stereotypical, yeah, you're supposed to do that. But they also, to a degree, over time, both of our sets of parents, I feel like, earned that from us as well. It wasn't just something that we gave, because there are plenty of people out there that have family environments where just because they were mom or they were dad didn't mean that they had their best intentions for them, or that
Right.
they weren't a problem in the upbringing of a certain individual. So again, it's that caveat of finding those people in your life that have earned the respect to be treated as a parent figure to you, and showing that respect and that gratitude back to them for the life lessons that they've taught you, for what they've brought to the table to help develop you, to nurture you, whatever that may be. Again, very different depending on what lens you look through and from one person's shoes to another. um, but absolutely. And then you take that a step further and say that my situation was not the same situation as like my little brother. My little brother was a very different type of person that I was, a little more free spirited. I love my little brother to death, to no end. Um, so some of the tactics that my parents took with me didn't necessarily work with him. They kind
Mhm.
of had to let him uh, do his thing a little bit more, just because again I felt like I kind of walked the line that was set down in front of me. You know, he didn't always. He certainly did at times, but didn't always follow that prescribed path from day one. And
Yeah.
you know, I also had to learn to respect that journey as well, because he's not the same person as I am. He had a very different personality about him, a different lens that he saw the world in. And again, you kind of alluded to it with having two little brothers. I'm sure they've got very different experiences, even in the same family structure, same family household, mold, everything.
Mhm.
Their experiences were different, and they had to go about learning those lessons in different ways at different points in time, just because
And
that's how life goes.
and that was, I can say that was a big adjustment for me, just like going, because I lived at home through college. And so, my one brother's only 18 months separated from me, so we're very close in age. My youngest brother is about 5 or 6 years younger, so we weren't really in school minus grade school at the same time. But my middle brother and I were in school at the same time, and it was a huge adjustment for me to kind of see what I don't want to say what I couldn't do, but the things that I was or wasn't able to do that, my other brother, he was able to. And it was a big adjustment of, well, it's two different journeys. I mean, there were, I don't want to say rules, or rules is the wrong word, but there were like certain things I had to follow that I never understood. Well, why did I have to do it but he
Right.
didn't? Well, it's because the way we were was just two different, it was two different dynamics.
Right.
It didn't affect me the same way it would have affected him and whatnot. So I do think that coming as an older child, that's kind of the something I think most older children could probably relate with. And it's I've heard people say in the past, no two kids are the same, and that's, you
Yeah.
can do that with anything in life or sports or whatnot. And so you can't look at it from the standpoint of, well, why'd he do it and I couldn't. It's sometimes it's what is best for that specific kid and their personalities.
Right. And to take that a step further, then you talk about, we kind of included grandparents in this, but again, I think that just takes up another level, is looking at and leaning on others' life experiences.
Mhm.
The amount of, if you are someone that is blessed enough to have a family that goes up multiple generations, and you've got good passive communication with them, those types of people, I mean, you talk about, your life experience, you've only lived X number amount of years. Well, your parents have at least that on you because they had you.
Mhm.
Take their parents into that. Now, all of a sudden, instead of drawing on 30 years worth of life experience, you bring your parents into it, and they probably have, you know, a, however many on top of that, and their grandparents on top of that.
Mhm.
That's a lot more knowledge to draw from, a lot more life experience to draw from. Now, very different places in the world in terms of world dynamics and everything else, because, let's be real, it's not the 1950s anymore for your
Right.
grandparents. It's not the 80s anymore for your parents.
Mhm.
So things certainly have changed over the years, but there's still a large number of things that are the same. How you interact with people a lot of times, at least when you're face to face with them,
Yeah.
how to learn from mistakes or learning from their mistakes. Um, when you see something, or when you have someone that's been successful in your life, trying to emulate, some of the things that they did right along the way, um, or just even a mindset and how they approach a particular item in their daily life, whether that's how they attack work, whether that's how they choose to take care of themselves, in their home life or whatever, drawing on that wealth of experience outside of just your own as much as possible, because that's your network, that's your foundation for everything moving forward.
Mhm. Yeah, I think one thing I'd like to add to that with grandparents, because I think everything you said is very accurate. A lot of times, and I'd say 98% of the situations, your grandparents are going to be substantially older than your parents, and obviously your parents older than you. So just the way of how life is, typically your grandparents are the first ones to unfortunately leave the earth, pass away.
Correct.
Take advantage of those moments when they're there, because you're going to look back one day and you never want to look back and say, I regret that I didn't do this.
Right.
I had four grandparents on my side. Three of them passed away before I was in second grade. So I went, and then my grandmother that was surviving lived in Columbus. So I didn't see her as often. I was blessed and fortunate enough that I was able to live with her, or excuse me, I'm sorry, she lived with us. She moved in with us her last 2 years of her life. And that was one of the most rewarding times of my life, quite frankly, because it's a different dynamic when you're around your parents all the time. If you're not used to having a grandparent around you, it's a very different feel. And a lot of grandparents are very innocent and whatnot, and especially grandmothers. So it can it definitely helps all parties involved. They're having the time of their life, especially when they're around their grandkids and their kids. You as a grandchild is obviously being around another person that you can look up to. I learned a lot about my culture, or my Italian heritage, through her. The necklace I wear all the time now is from her. It's good reminders now, but you never want to be in a situation where you look back and think, man, I wish I would have went and saw her more often, or I wish I would have tried to have that relationship with, my whatever it may be. So, like you said, it adds another layer of people that you can learn from experience from. So don't cut them out, or don't not take it into an account because, oh, they're way older. No, there's a lot of great advice you can get from grandparents, whether they were born in the 50s, the 30s, whatever it was.
Right.
Life experience is life experience.
Right. And I would say, I mean, that's where, and ultimately that's what it comes down to, is drawing on that experience, that whatever your foundation looks like, try to pull as much from that as you can, because most times those people that you look to as your parental roles, or as the people that are closest around you, most of the time they are looking out for your best interest
Mm-hmm.
in any number of ways, whether that's from the food that they're trying to fuel your body with, to the education they're trying to give you, to what they ultimately want for you, on off the court, in the classroom, with your friendships, with your personal relationships, and what that looks like. When people give advice, give it its due diligence and its credence, and you're not always going to hear it at first.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm almost, we're both almost 30 years old, and there are things that my parents told me back when I was 15 or 16 that they honestly didn't think that I ever heard, because it went in one ear and out the other. But
Yeah.
eventually, over time, that starts to work its way back in. That they were always consistent enough in what they said and what they told us, that eventually it made its way back in. And they didn't try to pull the "I told you so" 10 years later. It's they sometimes they'll joke about it and they'll go, "Yeah, I did this." And they're like, "Oh, really? Where'd you get that idea?" And you can kind of tell that it's like, "Oh yeah, it's not like I didn't beat you over the head with that idea for the last 15 years of your life," sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I just think it's important to appreciate the people in your life that are trying to look out for you. When someone cares enough to spend time with you or take an active role in your well-being, be appreciative of it, because not everybody has that. Heck, there are some people that might listen to this that don't have much of that, or if they do, it's very, very little. And that can be, that could be very tough. I can't speak from experience on that, but even my wife's version of her upbringing is very different, and her family dynamic is still is very different than mine.
Mhm.
So trying to figure out how to navigate that between different people is very, very different. It's going to look different from everybody else, but ultimately it comes back to that same sort of thing is, you know, be grateful for the people in your life that care about you.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I think that's honestly a kind of good segue into the other thing we want to talk about because like you said, some people don't have that dynamic with parents, grandparents, whatever that may be. It may be aunts and uncles, or quite frankly, it may be friends. And
Right.
I think
I think I think you put it really well, jokingly enough, and just bringing life back into it. I think you even shared something about on Facebook that we'd been friends on Facebook for so many years, but I
mm,
think you put it pretty well. There's the family that's blood that you don't get to choose, that's your family, but then there's the family that you get to choose,
mhm,
which are your friends and your support network outside of quote unquote blood relatives.
yes,
Um, you and I have been grateful enough to have met each other, what, 10, almost 10,
11 years
11
ago,
years ago,
11
what,
years.
fall of like 2012 or
Yep.
so.
Yep.
Um, Blessed enough to have just kind of met each other on a little bit of a whim and then just had it develop over time into, we're some of the best friends that anybody's going to find. We work together, go have fun together, go to basketball together, do this together. I mean, heck, some people think that we're more like a married couple than me and my wife are like.
Well, I can tell you if you played for Gem City Basketball Club, you ask any one of those kids, and they're going to tell you at some point they said, "You two sound like a married couple,"
You
and it's
guys
like
fight more than an old married couple,
yeah,
right?
it's like y'all have no idea the ups and downs that I mean, because you think about 11 years of friend. I think using ours is a good example because obviously we were fortunate enough to meet each other in college, and I feel like you have your friends you make in high school, but I feel like the friendships you make in college tend to be the ones that are a little more developed and they end up being the longer term ones. Not that you can't have
Right,
friends from high school. I mean, I have a small circle of ones from high school. I consider close friends, but
right,
like you and I would say the next five, if I had to list them, are all probably people I met in college. And
right.
again, we're going to be turning 30. Thanks for that reminder, by the way. And so so we've been through a lot of ups and downs in our lives. I mean, even in college, like everything wasn't rainbows and butterflies. I mean, there was probably like a 4 to 5 month window where you and I kind of like didn't drop off, but we did kind of like take a
Well, we just
step back.
yeah, we got involved with various different things. I think I was in, the very early stages of a very serious relationship with my now wife. You were in a very serious relationship with your at the time girlfriend.
Mhm.
Um, we were doing some different things at different points in time. Like things are going to happen and things evolve.
Mhm.
Um, and that's not to say that there haven't been times even recently that we've wanted to step on each other's throats. I mean, but that's where sort of that respect element comes in, and that again appreciation for the people in your life that care about you. First
Mhm.
topic was family. Second topic is going to be the family that you choose, the friends.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that comes back to once you find people in your life that you click with, that share common interests, whatever that may be. You and I connected a lot on sports. That's just something that we connected on from day one. And that's been the foundation of a lot of our friendship
Mhm.
from, whether it's just was going over to your parents' house on a Sunday to watch NFL football or going to play, a pickup basketball game at 10 o'clock at night at the local school, with your brother and my other college roommate. Like that's just how we started our friendship. But then that's been, a driving element of our friendship. I feel like, there are times where, you butt heads. What do you and I tend to do when we butt heads? We take the life equation out of it and we go to some crazy, awesome sporting event and just get back to the root of why we have so much fun together and why we're friends. You
Mhm.
know, whether it's a concert, whether it's a football game, whether it's going and playing around a golf and just getting away from all the other stuff in life. That's kind of where we retreat to.
Mhm.
And I think, again, keeping that core, I've got other friends that their interests vary in other areas, but that ends up being a focal point. And that's where some of that respect is. You got to respect the uniqueness in your friendships, because every friendship is a little bit different. Every friendship brings something different to the table. It's finding what makes that specific friendship relationship different and embracing it,
Mhm.
I think is where my mind goes to when I talk about friendships and respect for them.
Yeah, I think one of the first things that comes to mind to me, it's a cliche statement, but it's about quality, not quantity. Like you
Mhm.
want to have, I feel like a lot of the best friendships I have with like yourself and other people is it's those little similarities like with sports, concerts, music, whatever, like the everyday life stuff. But then also I feel like we have very similar values in life as well.
True.
And I
Correct.
feel like finding people that have similar values to you, those tend to be some of the better lifelong friends as well. Because, when quite frankly, when shit hits the fan, excuse my French, you want someone that's going to be able to, you know, help you out and understand your situation. And, that kind of goes back to you how you handle certain things. Like, how do you handle confrontation? What are your values in life? What is important to you in life? And I think having someone that has the same ideals as you, that helps you when that stuff happens. Because our friendship has not just been a da 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 da. It's gone through stuff. So
Always does.
and it's always, and I feel like a lot of times it's because just how we deal with conflict. I mean, you and I deal with conflict in two very different ways, but
Very
we
much so.
we also figure out like, okay, that's something that doesn't work very, like what you use to resolve conflict is may not the same as mine, and vice
Right.
versa. You got to do your own thing sometimes, but like you said, you come back and you get back to the root of, this is why this person is, I've chosen to make this person a friend of mine, and I choose to be around them. I mean, you never want someone that's you don't like being around. I mean, that defeats the whole purpose of it.
Well, and it also comes back to the root of, not nobody's freaking perfect. I'm not perfect.
Mhm.
I tend to get hot-headed a lot, very quickly with certain things.
Mhm.
I think also having a length of period of time where you get to know that is also, if ever, even with most of my friends know that if something ends, if something's going wrong or something makes me angry, I tend to bluster real fast up front. But then I'm also very quick to retreat off of that and make amends fairly quickly. And
Mhm.
my wife's had to learn that same thing. It's because there's an element in relationships of friendship there too, is you also just have to learn the differences about people in your life. And you know again, everyone's different, and that's just with conflict. That can be about, what means the most to them. Is what's going to mean the most to them. Is it going to be sitting, with your phones in the other room, and talking for a couple hours? Is it going to be going to a sporting event? Is it going to be sitting around a campfire listening to music? Is it going to be, you've got to find whatever that is that you connect on and make that important. And then also realize that, you know, embrace the differences as well. I've got friends that I'm a very sport driven person. I've got friends that are not sports people at all. They're very much more theater and arts types. But finding an appreciation for that and being willing to step outside of, oh, well, that doesn't sound like the most fun thing in the world to do. And then you go do it and you find out that, well, dang, that's a lot of stinking fun,
Mhm.
or that was really cool to see. There's different levels to everything. And I think embracing that difference in everyone is a huge part of it. And then I want to come back to one other thing you said: quality over quantity.
Mhm.
I think, at least in my experience, I tend to be a fairly personable person, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
I can make a friend in a crowded room. I can make a handful of friends in a room of 20 people.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of my personality, is just being outgoing. I'm not afraid to talk to anybody about anything, anywhere. So I've got a lot of people that I would consider friends, but there are a handful that I would consider best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very, like you said, there's a very different differentiator in that. And that core group, the wider group of friends is always going to be there, and people might flit in and out of that close knit group. Your handful of people that you rely on the most. But those people at this point in time, if you say, okay, those people that are my closest friends, those are the people that you need to pour that energy into and
Mm-hmm.
maintain those relationships, so that they don't fall off. Especially the longer those friendships are intact, the more energy you should give to that, not, I don't want to say reward it, but yeah, reward it, because it's going to pay back in rewards to you, whether that's it's a better, happier life.
Mm-hmm.
When you find people that are worth spending the time on, spend the time on them, flat out. um Again, those are the people that in your moment of need, your moment of crisis, who are you going to call? Most people would have a very, very short list.
Mm-hmm.
I know
And
my
what,
list is fairly short in that
right.
regard. If it came down to it and shit hit the fan, there's a handful.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, like, because I'm very much the same, but also kind of opposite. Because I'm not an extroverted person. I'm a very
Mhm.
introverted person. I am
Yep.
very. You do not. I don't. When I go out in public, I'm very much like keep to myself. I am not looking to communicate. If I'm at like a wedding for like a friend's wedding, I'm finding my people, and then that I'm not really like externally trying to talk much. I mean, it is what I'm able to admit
Then
that.
you contrast that to me, where I sit down at a table with like one buddy and make friends with the whole table.
Mhm. Right. But it's but and that's another, I mean, that's just another dynamic of like our friendship of you've got someone that, no offense, can't shut up, and another person that you can't get to talk, so they kind of balance each other out, whatnot. But
And
no, one of the
that's what I meant by appreciating the differences and the uniquenesses, is that if you surround yourself with the right group of people, it's kind of like what I would give advice in a an actual like relationship type advice would be, to find someone that makes you expand your horizons, or that is the opposite of your coin.
Mhm. Yeah. And I
Opposites
think
attract for a reason,
right.
sometimes.
And one of the other kind of nice things I like about, having your own like little circle is, especially when you can expand that. And what I mean by that is there's people I'm friends with. There's some people I think I know are on your list that maybe aren't on mine, but I'm good. I would consider myself good friends with them because I've met them through you.
There's
And I
different
think
tiers.
vice versa. There's people in my list that you wouldn't call a best friend, but you'd probably consider good friends because it just
Right.
kind of like it lets that network expand. And there's nothing wrong with that because again, if you are looking at it from a standpoint of when you're picking the relationships you want to do that, like have those friendships with, if the core values especially like are intact, that's going to go for anybody. Like you could go, if you gave your five and I gave my five, I guarantee if you put them all in the same room together, you'd find a lot of similarities of, a lot of different things. There'd be a lot of differences as well, but you're going to find some core similarities. And I bet you anything, 9 times out of 10, it's those values of like how you view life, how you choose to live your life, etc., things of that nature and whatnot. But
Right.
no, I mean, the only other thing I want to add is again, like the quality over quality over quantity. You know, always invest in those relationships and invest as much as you can. Don't be trying to go be Facebook friends with. I remember in high school thinking if you had over 1,000 Facebook friends, you were popular, you were cool.
Who gives a hoot?
Who cares? Well, and that's a good thing to say because we do have a lot of high school listeners. Is who gives a crap? I mean, quite frankly, I bet you
Right.
if you went on your Facebooks, you and I went on our Facebooks, 95% of the people on there, we would maybe have a conversation per year, if that.
Right. Some of them are just leftover contacts from high school or whatever else, but same thing with everything else. Again, but how many of those people that would be on my Facebook friends list would I put in my close circle of friends?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying best friends, my tight knit five, whatever. Five's just an easy number.
Yeah.
But whatever that number is, you're close knit. Then you've got your good friends. Then you've got your wider expanding group of friends, and then you've got, for lack of a better term, then acquaintances that go that are just brief touch points at a certain point in life that you don't really communicate with. I would say your core group of friends and your close friends, that secondary tier, those are the types of people that, again, that you should be investing your time with. Those are the opinions that you should take into consideration with things, because again, if you're doing it right, you're surrounding yourself with the type of people that you want to be like, where you have similarities, but a lot of times they have qualities or certain aspects about them that you wish you had more of, or you can at least see that and be like, dang, that'd be really cool to be, I'm trying to think of a good example. It'd be really cool to be that tech savvy. You surround yourself with those type of people, and maybe some of it rubs off on you, or it's just the type of, you see yourself wanting to be more that way. You can learn from people, and maybe they see something in you like, wow, he's really good with people. I'd like to learn how to do more about that, or at least, find, a way to benefit. It's not about the number. It's about the quality of those people, and surrounding yourself with the types of people that you would want to be like.
Yes. Yeah. And I want to add another good example. You use that example of like tech savviness. Just on a Friday night, you can usually tell if you ask someone what they do on a Friday night, you can usually tell that as well. Me personally, during basketball season, Friday night, I'm at a basketball game. Other people, they may say they like to just chill at home. Other people, they may say they like to go out. It just depends. But having that aligned is just as
Some
important.
people may say, I'd love to be at a basketball game, but my wife wants me home for date night.
For some people, that's the case. Yes. We won't name names on that one. But no, I mean, you want to, because I know, obviously, our friendship being in sports, I know that you are someone that on a Friday night, you're like, I'll go there, but I have to compromise with Mrs. Kyman. That's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Now,
with
if I
me.
get the green light, I'm there. But if not,
I understand
Mama
my
gets what
role.
Mama wants.
Yes, I understand. Yes, very true. But yeah, I mean, you want to be around people that are going to want to be like that, because like I can speak for me. That's how you and I kind of bond in our friendship. But we have other friends that we're just as content sitting watching Letterkenny or Shoresy on Hulu on a Friday night.
Right.
Like, we don't need to go to the bar or we go anywhere. Like, we don't need to do that. And again, some of that's not going to really resonate with our audience, because, high school kids, it's not really, you're not at that point in life. But as you get older, especially as you go through college and beyond, like, find those people that do have those similar, those similarities with you, because it's going to make the friendship a lot, not simpler, but it's going to make it a lot easier to navigate when there's similarities like that, if whatnot. So
I've always said, spend your time with the people that make you laugh so hard your head hurts.
Absolutely. We've laughed a lot, haven't we?
Oh yeah. At a lot of various different things.
Yes. You got to find a way to laugh. But yes, I agree. Get people that make you happy.
Yep.
People you're happy to be around.
And that's ultimately what it comes back to. And then circling back just on the respect part of it is, and even back to the appreciation of sort of the first one is, don't take those types of friends for granted either, because when you get good people in your life again that care about you, be grateful for it, because that's ultimately what I, at least in for me, that's what makes life worth it, is having people that you can spend time with, that you enjoy being around, that you can laugh with, that you can cry with, that you can do anything under the surface of the earth, under, in the world with, and just have a good time. That's what's
Mhm.
going to make life enjoyable. That's what's going to, you know, make those types of friendships, relationships last. And you can look back, hopefully when you're old and gray, and chuckle about all the fun times you used to have, when you're sitting on a porch, drinking tea through your dentures, sort of thing. Like, you know, be grateful for it. Because again, not all of those things are going to last, and not all of those people are going to be around forever.
And
And go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say, I think, just to piggyback off that real quick, I think that's another, that'll be a topic one day, I think, or a future one, because you know, life 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 is unpredictable, and life, you never know what's gonna throw at you. So
Yeah.
you can't assume, don't assume that you're gonna have that person around for another 10 years, because you never know what life has in store. And that goes for family and friends, either one.
Well, and life goes through various different patterns and seasons and distinctions of life. I'm in a very interesting intersection in my life where I've got a kid on the way. And so it's going
Spoiler.
to, spoiler alert, Seth's going to be a dad. Um, I know for a fact that a lot of my friendships are going to take a different spin once my kid gets here,
Mhm.
because having had parents and seeing the type of energy that requires to be the best type of parent that you can be, my focus is going to be on my kid. And it's going to take a high level of effort to maintain those types of friendships. My close friends, my second tier group of friends, will probably tighten up,
Mhm.
because there's only so much energy in a day, and there's a core group of people that you've got to hold on to no matter what. They're going to be, those are going to be the people that I turn to the most. Those are also going to be the people that are going to understand, what life situation that you're in at the moment, and realize that that's going to be one of those evolutionary phases where it's, yeah, I'm not going to be free to just at the drop of a hat go pick up and go anywhere I want to, because
Mhm.
I've got a kid.
Yeah.
Or if it's going to be something that we pick up and do at the drop of a hat, it's going to have to be something that's kid friendly. Lucky
Mhm.
enough for you and I in sports, if I've got a kid, if my kid gets here, and as they get older, or even as they're younger, they enjoy sports, it doesn't mean that I can't strap them onto the little kitty backpack deal thing and still go to a football game. I mean, I grew up going to football games as a 3 and 4 year old with my dad, because I loved it. That was fun. Dad and I got to go do something. And a lot of
Mhm.
times we went with his buddies,
Mhm.
you know, and they might have even had kids that they brought along to those types of things that I'm now friends with, you know 20 plus years later. I've got
Yeah.
some of those types of people in my life. So it, again, as things evolve, it's just, I think everyone's at a different stage in their life, and things evolve and change over time, and that's okay. Speaking directly to the high school kids, you're going to have a group of friends right now in high school that you might think are inseparable. But, as you get towards the end of high school and everybody starts figuring out where their next step of life's going to take them, whether it's college at this university or at that trade school, or you're going straight into the workforce or wherever, people are going to scatter. You might not think, oh yeah, my best friend's not leaving out of state, so, yeah, we're going to be friends forever. Even if they're at a school that's an hour away, that's going to it can change. Now, is it going to change to where you're not friends anymore? No, but that's going to look different for a couple of years. And
Mhm.
you're going to have to put very specific intentional effort into maintaining that relationship. While you're at college, you're going to come across a whole new friend group that are going to be your main friend group that you see day in and day out, or at least week in and week out.
Yeah.
And then when you graduate college, that's going to evolve again. You might hang on to a couple from each phase in life, or you might hang on to one from high school and have a whole plethora from college, or you might hang on to a really solid core group from high school and add one or two in college. And then as you move out of college, then everybody kind of, relationships come into effect, jobs come into effect where people move and do different things. But I, you know, if the people in your life really matter, you find a way to make it work in whatever evolution that takes. Whether
Mhm.
that's, hey, they're in town for the holidays and you make sure you set up a routine of getting together, before Thanksgiving every year, or around Christmas time, everybody's generally home. So you make a point to go get dinner with them, or go hang out, or go to a basketball game with them, just to catch up and maintain that contact. Um, Snapchat people, that sounds stupid, and people might
Mhm.
be like, "Oh, what do you mean?" Communicate with people,
Yeah.
share your life with people, especially if they're important to you.
Mhm.
There's people that I've not seen in a couple of years, but I still consider my close group of friends, because we've maintained contact in a strong enough way through social medias and things that if they were in town, a couple of them live across the country now.
Mhm.
If they were to come to town, or I was ever to be in that neck of the woods, we would probably get together still,
Yeah.
because they're the type of people that at some point were very important to you, and they've maintained it, enough of that to warrant that.
I think the biggest thing at the end of the day, it comes down to effort. Because, like, to your point, with you bringing a child in, obviously you're not going to be on your phone all the time because you got a little one. You're understanding that, like, okay, that's he's going down that path, he's going down his path, and but there's still an effort involved, and it's not very hard to put into effort. Like you said, you can very easily send a text message, hey, I'm going to be in town, you want to get together, if it's a cross country one. I think you and I do a very good job of, we just try to, like, granted we work together, so it's kind of hard, we see each other every day, but I think we try to, like, once every week, or quite frankly once every couple of weeks, we try to do something just together, not in work related, just to continue to grow
Something.
on that.
Yeah.
And obviously once your little one comes along, that'll be another element of another person that comes into that group, because your immediate, your partner and your kids, that's part of that friendship as well. you know
Mhm.
your wife is, I would consider your wife one of my closest friends as well, and I met her through you. So, like,
Right.
it's but that's going off track, I guess, per se. But, like, you got to put in the effort. There has to be an effort there to try to grow those relationships, and then to continue to keep them going. You can't
Yep.
just assume and coast.
Yup. I would say
That's a
we
good conversation.
sufficiently beat beat those topics into submission. I'm sure we could sit here and go on, and it would circle
Yeah,
back and forth and back and forth.
yeah.
But
It's a good
I
start. It's a good
also
start.
think that's a good way to sort of segue to, how we want to keep this series going. Hopefully people enjoy it. And it is just very much just a sit down and openly talk sort of thing. You know, no bullet points written down, no nothing. It's just kind of flying by the seat of our pants here. Um, but
Literally.
literally just sitting down and just talking. Um, Again, I don't have, Tony doesn't have all the answers for this stuff. We're talking from our experiences, and our experiences, you know, only and
They vary.
through the lens that we've had on our lives. Certainly that's not going to be the same for everyone that's listening. But if people have questions that they want to talk about, or have specific instances on how to navigate things. You and I are both here with open ears for pretty much anybody. You know, that's the one thing that, again, I don't claim to know everything, but I'll share what experiences I do have, in hopes that it helps somebody else out down the road. Or if there's a topic somebody else wants to hear us discuss, again, guys, comment, let us know. We'll keep this rolling with a couple more topics that we have next time. I think we're going to go into a little bit of, what did we say, Tony? Some mental health discussions.
Yeah.
As well as sort of balancing life between various things.
Yes, and I definitely I'm looking forward to mental health, because that was actually the most requested / suggested topic I got from our polled athletes. And I thought that was very interesting, because a lot of those kids had various ages. So I feel like that's going to be something very beneficial. I feel like we both have a lot of good insights on that. And again, like you prefaced it with, we don't have the answers. And what we're talking about on this conversation, it may not have anything to do with you if you're listening to it. But at the end of the day, it's more of how can we help the next generation of people just grow. And I feel like I said at the very beginning, life is all about experiences, and you learn from experience. So we can't give you the answers. We can't promise you what works for us is going to work for you, but if it has worked, there's a chance it could work for you depending on your situation. So take it with a grain of salt, but also be open to just kind of what is discussed. And like Seth said, echo it. If there's specific topics you want to hear, there's not really much topics that we won't talk about. I think it's a good idea to have these conversations, just so, again, people are in different boats in life, so they want to hear certain things and different things. So if we can provide decent and quality like input, I think we will. So, don't feel like any topic you may want to hear is not good enough. If it's that derogatory, we won't. But I mean, there's a lot of things I think we can talk about openly and have a good civil conversation with.
Heck yeah. Cool. All right, guys, that's what we'll call it, life part 1. So we'll circle back next time and tackle a couple more topics, and go from there. All right. Cool. I'll sign off now. Seth Kime, my
Tony
partner
Peters.
in crime.
Tony Peters. Beats to it.
All right, guys. See you next time. Thank you.
Later.